Alright guys, so we're going to be talking about the huge controversy going on right now with the Modern Warfare campaign. You guys know a bunch of different journalists have been speaking out on Twitter, and a bunch of the influencers and even YouTubers, with that one being Drifter and probably a few other, they've been talking about how controversial this game is going to be, how violent it is, and how it takes war in such a realistic point to where it doesn't need to be made. This game should not be made. I mean, some of these people are saying this game should not be made. These scenes should be taken out. It should pretty much be censored, and obviously if they go at them, if they go at Activision, and if they go at Infinity Ward hard enough and they make this a public situation, it could probably lead to pretty bad things for us, especially the consumer, because then Infinity Ward has to focus not on developing their game or marketing their game or getting ready for the DLC season. They have to focus on censoring their game. They have to worry about their game being rated potentially adult instead of mature, and they have to worry about all this different stuff now that these journalists are going after the campaign and pretty much everything that's going on, especially within those two missions that were shown here. So I want to show you guys a bunch of the stuff going on here and how this could actually be a pretty bad thing for Modern Warfare. This is not like some random journalist saying this. I mean, this could lead to, pretty harsh implications for this game. It could all be good. You never know. This could blow over, but things like these, and you guys know, especially nowadays, this could blow into a whole nother level. And if it gets here, national media attention that Modern Warfare is depicting you killing civilians and, bombing the different, areas with civilians and stuff, and it's like, why are you doing this? And, the whole national media will go after it, and Call of Duty would get screwed. And that's pretty much what would happen. So let's go through here a bunch of the important tweets here. This is a pretty important video if you're worried about Call of Duty being censored and this campaign. They're going for a realistic, insanely cool campaign. They're actually trying to make something cool, and obviously if they do that, they're gonna get screwed. So let's go through here. This is the main guy that people have been talking about, Dean. Call of Duty Modern Warfare impressions taking war in a frightening direction. So this guy actually was one of the influencers and journalists that was at that event, so he saw everything that was going on there, and he says he's a Call of Duty fan. He's been a Call of Duty fan since the first game back in 2003, but I've never wondered about this question before until now. Should this particular game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, be made? The small glimpse I've seen of it so far tells me no. So he is just flat out saying this is the first thing in the article here. The game should not be made at all. That's pretty crazy that he's just saying that. And a bunch of different journalists maybe were a bit, less harsh on Infinity Ward. They were saying, okay, some of the certain scenes, and even he goes on in this article saying that some of the scenes should be taken out. It shouldn't depict war as much as it does, or depict some of these harsh implications. Maybe war, shooting aimlessly in the battlefield of just different soldiers, maybe that's not as bad as going up close and personal and accidentally shooting a civilian in some sort of raid, as one of the missions depicted in the Modern Warfare demo that they saw. So maybe that sort of makes sense, but the whole game not being made, him saying that at the beginning of the article, that's a pretty big thing. I don't think that's really necessary there. Now, Drifter, obviously fan favorite Drifter, so he pretty much tweeted out as well, Call of Duty Modern Warfare makes MW2's No Russian look like a Pixar film. I'm deadly serious. When I was shocked by the level of realistic violence. Will be surprised if the game gets M-rated, instead of adult, as I said before. Good luck buying it in New Zealand, Denmark, or Southeastern Asian countries. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So this is what we're going through here. Now, No Russian, it's very interesting. So the demos they saw, obviously it depicted some violence, and if you guys want to see descriptions of those two campaign mission demos, they're on Charlie Intel. Maybe I'll leave a link down in the description below. But No Russian, if you guys remember No Russian, you're gunning down a whole airport full of people for seemingly no reason, pretty much no reason. That's pretty harsh. That's pretty crazy. And I'm pretty sure within those two demos, there is some violent stuff. You are killing civilians by accident. You are seeing like really terrible stuff. I mean, I know there's one where the girl sees her father die right in front of her, and then she's running around the house being chased by a Russian soldier, and then she's going and stabbing the Russian soldier, and then they're outside and they're being gassed and stuff, and the kid's under rubble and he's dying. Like, there's some crazy stuff. But gunning down a whole airport full of people, that's pretty messed up. So I don't think I don't really know. I don't want to compare both, because everything's it's all evil, but The airport full of people seems like a bit worse of a situation if you just want my opinion, but everything obviously is bad there. So another thing here, my reaction isn't that the developers should censor themselves or someone else should censor them. My question is about choices. So I actually like the point he's making here. We can make this kind of game, but should we? So we have the ability to make it. So he starts off by saying, should this game be made at all? And that really, it's not really a good look. But then he goes on here and he goes into more of a just questioning their morals, which still is weird, but not as bad. So I hope genuinely he wouldn't want to actually censor this game. Now, by posting this article, that does leave it open to media attention, where they're going to probably want to, censor this game and start talking about, oh, why is this so violent? The government needs to look at this. But he's saying here, okay, let's just look at Infinity Ward's morals. Like, should they make this game? Is it the right thing to do to make this game? They're allowed to make it. It's cool, but probably doesn't think it's cool. But, should they make this game? He's saying here that he had a conversation with an Uber driver that lets his 6-year-old play Call of Duty. So here's the problem. That's not our fault that the Uber driver is letting his 6-year-old play Call of Duty. That's no one's fault but the Uber driver's fault. And letting his son play Call of Duty when he's only 6 years old, that's just something. These just things you can't stop in this world. It's like, okay, kids could obtain alcohol, like they can get their parents alcohol in the cabinet and they're little kids. Should you ban alcohol? No, obviously not. So it's the same thing here. So that's a pretty bad case to make, and obviously you shouldn't think about that when making the game, because it's obviously meant for a certain age bracket that's not kids, that young. So that's just doesn't make any sense there. He also says this Modern Warfare will be controversial and might just be popular because of that controversy. The company can weather the storm of criticism, but it would be a very cynical path to popularity. I would encourage the developers to examine whether they should include the scenes I've seen. Sure, it is realistic and things like this happen in the world. And he goes on to talk about different stuff, and he gets a little better here. I don't want to completely trash him, because at the beginning of the article he's just saying flat out this game should not be made, and then he goes on just saying, okay, you know what, they do have the right to make this game, but should they? And now he's saying, okay, maybe just take out those scenes. So it seems like he's changing his opinion sort of, or he wasn't so clear at the beginning. And I'm gonna move on to another guy here. He actually retweeted this guy, I guess another journalist. Saw a couple demos of COD Modern Warfare a couple weeks ago. What intrigued me and how unsettling it was, the other really rubbed me the wrong way. And he goes on to talk about similar stuff as Dean. He also tweeted out something else here. This is Vice's article. Call of Duty Modern Warfare can't decide whether war is bad or don't want to get demonetized. But anyway, here's a section of that article. After that earlier narrative-focused cell, animation director Mark Rigsby, back to Infinity Ward after going to Respawn to work on Titanfall 2, stood in front of the theater and told us that his team followed this mantra. The weapons are the stars, and the player must feel like a bad when they wield them. And this guy pretty much goes on to talk about them pretty much glorifying war and making it so they're not just making this campaign to have like this realistic depiction of these, crazy war scenes and all the insane stuff that these people saw that they were so offended by in these different campaign missions. Pretty much they, I guess, are saying and making the case that Infinity Ward is not just focusing on that, because if they did focus on that only, then it would be fine, because it's definitely important for people to understand what actually goes on in war, but also they're worried about making sure people are, feeling bad blank in these weapons, and, when you're killing these civilians, you feel good and the weapon feels good, and they go on to talk about how they focus so much on these, realistic weapon shootings. I remember from one of the videos that someone made, they were talking about how the empty bullet shells were actually bouncing off of the side of the wall. You can hear that noise, and they were, paying attention to those important details. And these journalists are pretty much saying, oh, so they're pretty much making it sort of like a glorified war game where you're shooting civilians and you have these realistic weapons, and it's not just about, understanding the severity of the situation and how horrible it is, but it's also about just having a fun time in these crazy realistic settings. And I don't know, it's a weird situation, because I do understand where they're coming from, but obviously they're not glorifying this, they're not advocating for it, and they're not making it out to be like, oh guys, have fun in this campaign mission. They're making that to literally make people feel something, and they're making it so insanely emotional, because that's a good campaign, that's like good storytelling, and it's definitely educational, it definitely is just a well-made thing they could do, rather than just going into a war, having a fun gun to use, and just shooting mindlessly without actually, having some context and understanding what exactly you're doing and why exactly it's happening. I feel like what they're doing here would definitely help people understand how bad war is, instead of an old Modern Warfare or an old Call of Duty game, a campaign where you're just shooting aimlessly and you don't really know what's going on. So I don't know. I don't really like the points they make here. I understand where they're coming from, because it is pretty crazy and kids could get their hands on it, and maybe, it's too harsh for the world, but come on. First of all, it's a video game. Second of all, I think they're doing it in a pretty good way, and we'll have to see how they do it, but obviously, now, this is not really the best thing for the media surrounding this game. If this gets like a big deal and people really start talking about this, then Infinity Ward is going to have to do something. They don't want to have a bad look, and Activision stock is already down. I'm even surprised they even went with this campaign, because I feel like they would have known that they would have got this level of controversy if they're doing crazy stuff like they seem like they're doing within this campaign. But they are going with it, and we'll see what happens. So hopefully it doesn't affect the game too much. The game could go to adult, rating, which would be insane. I mean, depending on how the rest of the campaign is, if it does, that'd be crazy. Now, it being banned, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Nowadays, anything could happen. They really like to censor stuff nowadays. So it being banned to some extent, I could definitely see happening, especially in those different countries that Drifter talked about. I can honestly see those different countries just saying, we don't want that stuff. We don't want, New Zealand, after the shooting, they don't probably want any of that stuff. And I could definitely see that happening. And it being censored, for sure, definitely could be censored if the government, really finds out what's going on here, and it becomes like a huge media attention everyone's talking about. The government could for sure censor this. So, we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully this blows over and Infinity Ward says something, makes a statement as to why they're doing it, and everyone understands. But if not, I don't know, you better pray, make sure nothing happens. So, having said that, guys, for watching. If you guys did enjoy, leave a comment below Modern Warfare if you watched the whole video. It's greatly appreciated. See you guys later.